Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to Wholesale Hotties, the place where ladies in real estate are talking about real estate. I'm your host and MC, Sharon Lee Smith, and my co-host this evening, Donda Molinex, with her puppy. Say hi, puppy. And we have an amazing guest this evening, Jennifer Steward. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you came on.
Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you for having me. This is a wonderful opportunity to connect with women and discuss real estate. What percentage of real estate investors are even women? Shannon, have you ever looked that up?
I haven't specifically looked it up. I have heard in other panel type discussions, it's probably about 18%. So
Okay.
a small fraction.
That's better than I thought. I thought it was closer to 10. So that's better than I thought. That's great.
Yeah, I think that we're making waves and making headlines.
Good.
So that's good.
Yeah, that
so
is
Jennifer,
great.
tell us about you. So let's start with, how did you get into real estate in the first place?
Okay, well, I needed a job, and my friend Heather said, hey, I've known you for 20 years. I've got this job, and I need someone who can really determine the motivation of sellers. And I've known you since middle school. I've never known anyone who was better at determining, intuitively knowing people's motivations better than you do, in like a scary way. And these are her words, not mine. Like, we used to go to the bar together, and I'd be like, hey, that guy's going to follow us home.
Yeah.
And sure enough, he would get in his, he'd get in his shit kicker truck, right? And we followed home, and she's like, how did you know he was going to do that? Or I'll say, oh, hey, as soon as this person goes up to speak, so-and-so is going to leave the room. It's like, how'd you know that? I'm like, because that person finds that other person viscerally disgusting. I can tell by their face.
Yep.
So you have to develop that same intuition over the phone to be good at acquisitions to a large extent. At least it helps, right? And so she hired me, and you know what I got paid, ladies? I got paid a cool $5 an hour.
Woo! When was this, Jen?
This was January of 2016.
Okay, not long ago.
I know. I had just graduated at the top of my class with a science degree in psychology, and my grandma was like, what are you doing taking this $5 an hour job? I said, well, and I had just had a baby, and I said, well, I can do it from home, and I'm so glad I can do anything from home, and just that extra $200 a month is going to keep us from having to move in with my in-laws, because we were on the other side of the business. We were facing a $200 a month hike in rent, and that was out of our budget, and so that was going to make it so we could maintain our independence. And I told my grandma, I said, give me 10 years and see how this goes, because there's so much potential for insane profit. If I can figure out how to find these deals, then I can be just like these investors that are hiring me for $5 an hour. And most of them are out of the business now, and I'm still here. So she's like, Jenny, you were right. So sometimes you can take a shit job that has amazing potential and just really keep the long view in mind. We're not talking about slaughtering pigs on a factory line here.
Right. We're talking about talking on the phone, which is a nice, cushy job to some extent. Yeah.
Right. And the utmost respect to the people who do that job. So I'm not trying to be disrespectful, because
it's hard work.
And not have to do that myself. I mean, that's sad. I'm a big softie. I'd have to become a completely different person to kill animals for food. And so that's how I got started. And then from there, I was a cold caller, and then a lead manager, and then an acquisitions manager. And then I ended up with a lot more clients than I could possibly handle. And so I started duplicating myself and started an agency, which I said before the call, I have up to now 212 virtual assistants over the last 8 years, which then led to clients saying, well, hey, Jen, I need data and skip tracing. So I started a data and skip tracing company. Oh, hey, Jen, I have a lot of deals, but not enough money. So then I became a lender as well for both commercial and single family. So I really just specialize in both finding and funding deals. And it all started with a buddy from middle school saying, hey, I need your help to get into these sellers' heads and determine, what really is their motivation. And at first, ladies, I was terrified and terrible. I was not good at it, even though I might be decent at reading people. It wasn't just, I hopped on the phone and I was amazing. I required a lot of training, a lot of patience from my employers, a lot of practice. And look, I've had the same script sitting next to me for years. It's like Dumbo's feather, even though I've memorized it backwards and forwards. In fact, I haven't made calls myself in 4 years. I still keep it next to me because it was everything to me for so long. And so it's covered in sweat, tears, spittle, coffee, food. I mean, you name it, all the bodily fluids and despair and frustration. And then
that's right.
I turned these scripts into multiple thriving businesses, all from that one core domain competency of getting on the phone and talking to sellers and getting them under contract and figuring out, okay, is this person actually closable and in what capacity and with what exit strategy?
Wow. Very nice.
Very good. Very good. So, all right. So you started cold calling, worked up to lead manager, and then now, so how did you make that transition into your own agency? Right? What brought that on? And then how in the world? Right?
Well, I was working about 80 hours a week and I could not take on any more clients. I was like, I can't do this. So Upwork came to me because I was using Upwork to find clients at the time. Mm-hmm. And they said, hey, could you be one of our beta testers for agency concept? At that time, I don't know if it's still true, you had to be a successful freelancer that was top rated in order to start your own agency. So no one could just come off the street and compete with me and just start, their own agency. They had to already be a freelancer who was successful. So I said, okay. So I paid 10 people $10. I was like, hey, here's a sign-on bonus of $10. Will you join my agency? I said, all you have to do is just show up and read a script and breathe, because that's pretty much all I did.
And breathe. Yes.
Read, breathe, baby. That's it. You get paid $20 an hour. And that was the going rate for cold. People had Americans cold calling back then. It wasn't, Filipinos or AI, even though AI is not quite there yet, although I'll be ready to sell it when it is.
Yeah.
It was Americans. It was people like you and I. It was housewives. It was dudes with alcohol problems that couldn't hold down a regular job, but were good at talking. I mean, these were the people who were doing this job from home. And I said, guys, all you have to do is just show up and breathe and read your script. You'd be surprised how amazingly difficult it was to find someone who could just show up and breathe and read a dang script.
Girl, anytime I hire Americans, I have the problem of just show up, man. I hire the Mexicans. They show up.
Yes. Well, they're more loyal. Yeah. I mean, it's culturally.
And hard workers. Yeah. Yeah.
Loyalty and hard workers. I don't know how we're going to survive as a country with the work ethic, but my work ethic never went away. And although I did take some time off last year because the market was so slow, I was like, I don't want to work 4 times as hard to make 1/4 the profit. So as you saw, Sheena, I just traveled around the country with my family. But so then all the people came and the Americans, I had some good ones until COVID hit. And then the extended unemployment came, which was a joke. I mean, it really was a joke. And I think it's why we have such high inflation now, that and low interest rates. So after that, all my Americans left with the extended unemployment, even though I had literally 300 clients because of people like Brent Daniels, TTP, who had taught everyone to get on the phone and cold call. So I had literally hundreds of people who needed my help at the start of COVID, and all my Americans went on extended unemployment. So you know what I had to do? I was forced to buy an army of Filipinos from a lady who was closing her agency. So you think of, properties as assets, sometimes labor assets. So for everyone that was performing, I paid a certain amount to basically purchase them from her. Now, of course, they came of their own free will here. We're not talking about chattel slavery or anything.
That's I hope not in this day and age, but yes.
We're not confessing to any kind of underground slavery rings here through virtual assistants, but they came of their own free will, and the cash on cash return is ridiculous for those purchases. So I had to replace all of my Americans with those overseas folks. Uh-huh. And then I was able to fill those clients. And then those people see that I'm a halfway decent employer, a halfway decent leader, although I've gotten better and better and better. My emotional maturity used to be a lot lower. I'm sure I still have a long way to go if you can't tell based on my jokes. But, you have to have you got to be able to laugh a little or you're going to go nuts.
Yeah.
So then they bring their friends, their family, and they're like, Jen's really nice. As long as you do your job. If you don't, she's not nice at all. And that's because it's our livelihood. That's nothing to joke around with. So although I like to joke, I am deadly serious about finding deals for my clients, for getting loans closed. I like to joke because the other part of me, I would be an intolerable person if I didn't have a decent sense of humor because I am an extreme control freak. I have hundreds and hundreds of reviews on Upwork. If you look up agencies, if you look at Phone Phoenix Agency, you'll see, 240 reviews of completed contracts. That doesn't even count the ones that are still going. And you'll see that we're 100% job success score with all of these. Do you know how much of a control freak you have to be to achieve that among that many workers and that many clients? I mean, they have to send me an end of day report, and it's like their report card every day. And if they're not hitting their KPIs every day, then we have a talk. So whether I'm, sitting on the toilet, like other people may be scrolling Facebook, I'm scrolling end of day reports. Like, oh, okay, good job. Oh, this client has gone 2 days without a lead. There's always 4 things you need to dig into if you're not getting leads or deals. It's, do we need to change the script? Do we need to change the market? Do we need to change the phone number that we're calling from? Or do we need to change the data that we're pulling? Now, usually it's backwards from there. We need to look at the data first. Then we need to look at the phone number. Okay. And I love Batch Dialer. I don't have an affiliate with them. If they're ever listening, please send me one because I've got dozens of clients on Batch. Because with Batch, they automatically change your phone number to where if it comes up as spam likely, they change it. I mean, it's worth its weight in gold. I think it's $300 for that feature. Totally worth it.
How often are you seeing that turnover of numbers? Is it even noticeable with Batch doing it kind of automatically?
So some of my clients don't want to pay for that extra feature. And so my team still has to do it manually for those clients. I think that Batch level is 130. And I think they have to change them. Look, whenever we were doing it manually from CallRail in the old days, we'd have to change them hourly, hourly. And the old days, all my team would call me like in 5-minute increments, be like, okay, you call me 105, you call me 110, you call me 115. And they would call me from their phone numbers. And then instead of having to take the time to do back and forth, I would just take screenshots of every call and send it to the caller who had just sent them to me to see which ones were coming up as spam likely to my cell phone. So it was like all day long, I was taking screenshots and sending to them. So once Batch came out with that feature, I was like, oh, thank God I don't have to sit there and screenshot all these phone numbers coming in. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I honestly, I don't know. But I do notice as I'm kind of like watching all the WhatsApp, all the channels come in, I'll say, hey, we need some new phone numbers. But that's a good question. But thanks to Batch, we don't have to monitor that anymore. They do it automatically.
Awesome. Good.
Definitely worth that fee. It sounds like,
Absolutely.
So then so you're cooking and rolling and you've got this team, then where did you transition into lending? Like how did that take place?
Yeah. So as you know, I will go and speak at events, and because I have a decent funnel of clients, lenders would approach me and say, hey, Jen, you have all these clients and you have all these deals. Is there any way you would want to broker for us?
Right.
especially because, it's these hard money funds.
Right.
Like Investor Loan Source is my favorite one with Tom Berry, right? And so Tom Berry came to me and was like, "Hey, can you do these loans for us?" And then after that, other people are like, "Hey, can you do loans for us?" Now, I always use Tom Berry's first because I like to dance with the one who brung me, and I'm not someone who's always looking for the next or best thing. I try to always stick with the person who treated me well and brought me to the dance.
Right.
And so I always try to use Investor Loan Source first. And then after that, if I can't, then I would go to other DSCR sources. So it's just really these hard money funds. They need people to bring them loans because, hard money isn't competitive on price. Like Tom Berry says, we're not always the prettiest girl at the dance because the DSCR rates are anywhere from 2 to 3 percentage points higher. And that doesn't always work for your rentals. The flips can be, higher than what private money lending is, or like true private money lending. And people say to me, "Well, Jen, that's expensive. I'm getting 10 and 2 or 8 and 2. I don't want 11 and 3, or if they have a bad credit score, it might be 14 and 4." And I'm like, I'm selling money, not relationships. If you want friend prices, you need to go make some friendships. I'm not selling friendships. Exactly. I'm selling money. I'm selling hard money. Right. And I can't sell relationships for you. You have to build those yourself. You have to go into the community and educate people and how to lend. Look, I have a private money lender who lends me at 4.25, me personally. He was a music teacher, right? So you have to get out of the business to find those people who have money just sitting. Some people are happy to lend to you at the rates of CDs.
Right.
Certificate of deposit. But you're not going to find that in the real estate community. As Tom Berry says, we're all greedy pigs.
Exactly. Well, we're knowledgeable pigs, right? We know the business and we know what the market will bear. And so we have the ability to increase our profit that way.
And the risk too.
Yeah.
Retired teachers may not always, you know what I mean? And of course they're accredited. You want to make sure anyone who, at least I do, I want to make sure that whoever might lend to me is accredited. And, sometimes with teachers, not always income, could be assets. Yeah. And so that's really how it happened. Was I do have a lot of clients, praise the Lord, and we do get a lot of deals. And so we need a way to monetize these great people who need loans. Because I have had people have the excuse, "Oh, Jen, I would love to keep doing marketing with you, but I'm out of money." I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear I don't have the money. I want to go, "Hey, no problem. I've got you."
Right. Absolutely. So
your main focus then is on getting these properties and selling them to fix and flippers or landlords or combination? Is that what you're...
Yes, that great question. So all the people who come to me to help them find deals are usually the investors themselves or wholesalers or landlords. Some people are just looking for 2 or 3 properties for pad splits. I have 2 clients in very highly populated, expensive areas. One is in Denver, and they can rent by the room for $2,000 a month.
Wow.
So 3 to 4 properties, and guess what? They're done, and they're 28 years old. Yeah. And so I get all kinds of clients everywhere in between. I get high volume wholesalers who've done some time, some rough dudes. And then I have husband and wife teams who are extremely upper middle class, waspy folks who just want to pad their retirement a little bit. And then I have high volume flippers, regular landlords, everything in between.
And now are your team is making the cold calls and just producing warm leads and then handing leads off to those people to close? Or are you closing those contracts and wholesaling it to them yourself?
Great question. So we don't like to limit ourselves to just cold calling because there are too many other lead sources, right? There's PPC, TV, radio, mailers, texting, side of a bus, bandit signs, you name it. So we really specialize more in lead management, but lead gen is usually what people come to us for as well. And they'll be like, well, cold calling sucks. I want PPC. Well, guess what? We call on PPC and we know to call within 5 minutes. Yeah. So it's like I can't get away from people knowing me for cold calling because that's what I did. But lead management is a word that is kind of a little bit more refined. Kind of like if you go to this tribe in Africa where cows are their money source, they have like 200 words for the word cow. So since I'm in the calling business, there's cold calling, there's lead management, and then there's acquisitions management. But to someone outside of our little niche culture, it's all just called cold calling. But really what we specialize in is lead management, where we're moving people down the decision-making timeline so that we can get them in front of the closers. We do some light price anchoring, some, hey, it looks like other investors in the area are paying XYZ. There's no way you'd go for that, would you? Right. So, and then, or we'll set an appointment. We'll use price as that kind of segue to set an appointment. Someone's like, well, we want 300 or nothing else. Okay, great. Well, when would be a good time for Donda to give you a call that we can get you a well-considered offer? Right. We just use that to set the appointment. Now, why don't I have a whole holster of acquisitions managers? I don't know anyone who's achieved that. And the reason why is because by the time they are that good, they don't need you.
They're out.
They don't need you. And they are out. And so that I've had 2 over the years. And one of them was really good. And then he changed his PTSD medication and he had some mental health challenges and he was no longer stable. And then the other one, she was more of an employee type mindset. And even though she was better than me, she was one of the people who trained me. And then she left the person that she was with and she's like, hey, Jen, can I come join you? And then she ended up going to sell insurance just because she was in such an employee mentality, even though she was more talented, more experienced, and better than I was on the phone. So it's not just do you have the skill set and the mindset, it's do you have the stomach for, okay, I'm doing all these acquisitions. And then if you're going through a tough dispo part of the market, then what are you going to do? So it takes a special person to not only be excellent at being an acquisitions manager, but then most people don't stay an acquisitions manager because it is like you are the goose that laid the golden egg. Why should anyone have you on a leash, right? And so that's why we don't have acquisitions managers, because no one can keep them in mass. I know some Egyptian places claim that they have them, and maybe they do, but I haven't seen it. Anytime I have tried to purchase them for myself, they ended up just being kind of glorified lead managers that do soft closing. So full transparency, that's what we do. We'll do a soft closing. But basically, we're really excellent lead managers. Everybody has at least 3 years experience. They have to have at least 3 years experience before they come to me. And then most of my people have been with me since around COVID times, because that's whenever I had to buy all the Filipino labor from other agency owners who were dissolving for various purposes because they couldn't figure out how to be profitable. And it's because they never did what I did. You can't just come into this business and go, oh, I'm going to be an agency owner and I'm going to make all this passive money by selling virtual assistants. All of those competitors are gone.
Right.
All gone. I don't know. I mean, there were some big people who were way bigger than me, had way bigger backing behind them, way bigger names, way bigger marketing. And you will see them a lot more, but I've kept my operations lean, mean, and quiet. Right.
That's right. So when someone wants to contact you, they email you directly, right?
That's right.
So that's beautiful, right? Keeping that overhead low and all that budget low allows you really to flourish in this space, I think.
Thank you. Awesome. Yeah, my overhead is $400 a month.
Nice.
Like that's $400 a month. Nice. Well, that's because they stay on the bench until people hire them. Yeah. And we get paid up front, or it's through Upwork, right? And Upwork makes sure you get paid. So my people aren't just sitting on a payroll. The hour is paid before the cost is even incurred. And same with the data and the skip tracing too. It's not like cans on a shelf. We pull it once people ask us to pull it. And then with the loans, that's no overhead. I have some overhead with Calm Loan. I pay $150 a month to be there with that, but that pays for itself a lot of times over. And so, yeah, my overhead is really low because I don't incur costs until the money comes in, if that makes sense. And that has allowed me to stay in business for a long time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Tell us about skip tracing. So you've got a team that does the skip tracing for you. How does that work?
Yes.
What does that do?
So I have 3 team leaders in 3 different shifts. Great question. So I have shift 1, shift 2, shift 3. So no matter when an order comes in, because all of my cold calling clients, they usually order from us. And so we get most of our orders, honestly, from that. Because of like we talked about, I don't mind mentioning, because I know that, the market is big and out there. With Deal Machine, it's like, people don't really need just your random Jenny to do these high volume deals, because most people don't need more than 10,000 anyways. That's what Deal Machine is doing. So I don't even mind mentioning that because people know about it anyways. It's like whenever you're talking to sellers and you're like, oh, don't mention a realtor, because then they might think of a realtor. I promise you, they've already thought about a realtor. So
exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Here's why you would use us instead of Deal Machine. And that's because we are going to be very concierge. Like there's a lot of conversational back and forth, the owner of the company, and you get to talk to the team who's pulling it. So I have 3 teams, and then behind every team is between 5 to 10 people who are working in and for them. Now, those people have overhead. That's their problem, honestly, right? So they I'm more like the GC, and they're more like the subcontractors. So they have overhead because they have their teams that they have to pay. But for me, I don't pay them until they do the job, right? So the client pays me. I give my subcontractors the order, right? And then whenever they send me back the order, I pay them, and then I keep the spread, right? So that way, they have the overhead, but I don't. And that's how that works. So like I said, I have them in different shifts, shift 1, shift 2, shift 3, and they're all in Pakistan. So, and they're all very devout Muslims. So we always joke that we all have to go hat in hand to Allah's pull for data. It's like, you need to know, if you're in the data business, you better know, your Muslim holidays, because like mine just passed, right? And so I try to give them a little bonus so they can pay their people extra, or they can buy extra food. And so, so I've got my Buddhist people, my Muslim people, my Jewish people, my private money lenders are often Jewish. And that's just because, that's what they know culturally, and not being like,
exactly. That's just their culture. You're absolutely right.
It's the
culture. Yeah.
And then, and so anyways, I have all the major religions working in my companies and in my spheres. And it really helps if you have that multicultural, not have an ethnocentric perspective and personality where you feel like there's only one way to think. That's, I don't get that. Like, how can you get through life and think that the way you think is the only way to think? It's your preference. It doesn't mean it's inherently right or wrong. So they like that about me, is my point, right? Because even though they know that I am Christian, I'm not like, I'll speak in their language. I'll say, well, hopefully we'll get a lot of orders today, inshallah, or, you know what I mean? So if you're going to be running a big business, you really have to be inclusive, and then I have a lot of gay male Filipinos who do an amazing job on the phone. And I'll be like, hey, girls, you going to Lady Gaga this week? And like, if we can get a ticket. And so, so I really enjoy that aspect of leadership, of making people feel included and making people feel loved that otherwise can feel marginalized here in the United States and in around the world. There are good people everywhere. And if you give them an opportunity to make a living, you really bring out their best, Do
you think that being a woman gives you that extra strength, right? To the nuance of nurturing your team?
Yeah, I would have liked to have had more babies, but I had autoimmune, and then I had a spouse who had good sense, who's like, no, we don't need to have more. So I feel like there is just being primal here. There is a lot of nurturing energy that probably should have gone into 2 more children. I had my last one at 30. I had 2. And that was almost, that was 10 years ago this year. And so I really, really miss having babies. I love babies. And if my life had been different, I think I could have been a really happy, Stepford wife, housewife, go to the community barbecue and compare headbands and high heels. But that's not the way life worked out. I had to make money, and I did have autoimmune. It was very difficult for me to bring children into this world. And so I feel like there really is a lot of nurturing energy that I put into my business, my clients. It does not come from a place of domination at all. It comes from a place of collaboration, kindness. And yes, as a mother, I feel fiercely protective of making sure my children have enough. I would call it more of a nesting instinct than a world domination instinct. Like, I need this big amount of money and all these assets so that my children are okay no matter what. And that's a different thing. That's a different impetus versus, a machismo man box, which again, masculinity is a beautiful thing. We need without my spouse's masculinity, I would have to be a much harsher person. I mean, he really shields me from a lot of the world's harshness. But yes, I think that's a great insight, Shannon, that it comes from a place of wanting to nurture, protect, and nest versus Genghis Khan dominating, raping, killing across the land and being the father of 1/3 of all Asian people. Like, how did that dude have enough energy to make all those kids?
I don't want to know.
I mean, was he on some ancient form of stimulants or what? But
could be. I mean, PCM has some pretty powerful herbs for male performance.
And you look at Catherine the Great, and she went to war plenty of times. So we can't even make it about, masculinity. But she had a really hard life, and I don't want to get too off the trail there. So she was giving their generals what they wanted to a certain extent. So we really have to check our motivation as to why we do things. And like Tom Kroll says, I know you like Tom Kroll, if we go past our money goals, we don't have a money problem, we have a spiritual problem. So there is a certain amount where I'm good. I am good. I don't need to just keep going and going and going. But what makes it kind of happen is my good people will refer other good people. And so, not to be ridiculous in this comparison, but in some ways, it reminds me of like an economic version of Schindler's List. Like, you got to bring on one more. You got to bring on one more. You got to bring on one more so that you can save them from the big bad world and the big bad bosses that don't care about them. And I have good clients. And so at some point, I may have to put up a boundary and say, I can't hire anymore, but as long as the clients keep coming, I'm going to keep hiring. And that's the only reason why I've kept expanding past a certain point, is because I want to give people that refuge in a world that's very harsh, and in a place where they'll be appreciated and making a good living with clients who appreciate them and need them. Because we're talking about helping people with their freedom, their retirement, their portfolios, and it's hard to stop. It's hard to say no when people say, Jen, I need your help. Yeah.
I love that, and I think that's one of our powerful places that we come from as women, is that wanting to nurture and help people in general, and whether it's our team or our family or others in the world. I know for me, like, my goal is domestic violence assistance and sheltering and that type of thing, and so my goal is to make as much money as I can so I can help as many, people out of those situations as I can, and so, I think that that's a beautiful thing. And I think that being able to use our businesses to help others is just, what God calls us to do on some level.
Yes, absolutely.
And rather than just accumulate the wealth like a dragon, hoarding the gold, right? Using it for his purposes and for, bettering the world, I think is beautiful.
Yeah, I agree 100% on that, ladies. That sounds, you nailed it. It definitely nailed it. We just are definitely nurturers, and we just need to continue to follow our hearts, because I think that's why we were designed the way we were designed.
You have to have some warrior in you, though, as we all know.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise people will subdue and thwart your efforts towards nurturing. They will dominate you for your kindness. They'll dominate you for your sweetness. And so I have found, as you've seen, sometimes, Shannon, with certain people, I have to be really picky or prickly and really aggressive and overtly dangerous. You have to be dangerous, like Jordan Peterson says. I mean, you have to have the ability to be dangerous so that you then can be an effective nurturer, right? Yeah. If that makes sense. You have to dig deep and find that place in you so that nobody can F with you ever, right? And when they try, they deeply, deeply regret it. And so that is the space that I don't like to shift into. But I will, because I'm not going to let anything get in the way of my true task of nurturing and healing. And I don't talk about that much because usually I'm around men, and that's like, like, ew, that sounds
right. We do that quietly in the background so they don't really notice, but they notice, right? But yeah, absolutely.
So I don't really even get to talk about that side of myself. So this is a real treat. This is a real treat. Because I get to express the side of me that usually stays extremely private. Not because I'm ashamed of it, but because there is very little occasion for it to come up.
Well, because there's only 18% of us, right? That's the biggest problem, is the number of women in real estate, at least in the investment space, right?
On the investment space.
Agents, there's a lot more female than men. Yeah. But that's, I think, a different world than what we're talking about, right? Oh, yeah. We're talking about running teams, running contractors, right? Running all construction and all these things, that it's a man's world out there. And you're absolutely right. It's hard to find the right spaces to have these types of conversations. On that note, hey, do you know are you going to the Sweetheart Mastermind? Donda, have you heard about the Sweetheart Women in Real Estate Mastermind?
Oh, great ladies. Great leaders.
Girl, you ought to come if you haven't signed up yet this year. I'm going to the first session and then probably staying. They're doing their 2 sessions a week apart, and they're doing a private money lending thing in the middle. So you can go to the first session and then stay for the private money lending, or come to the private money lending and stay for the second session. Anyway, all that babble. So it's Wendy Sweet, who is one of the biggest hard money lenders in North Carolina, South Carolina, I think Georgia too, and Virginia. And then Mary Hart, who's one of the top lawyers in the country on estate planning and all kinds of stuff. And she's a keynote speaker. She's absolutely wonderful. She also does private money lending as well. But the Sweetheart Women in Real Estate Mastermind, girl, I went last year, life changing. It's just so phenomenal, right? Because you've got 25, 30 women. It's all 3-4 days in a row. And you are just communing with other women who do this, right? And it's just so beautiful to have these vulnerable conversations, right? It's very much what happens here stays here. And we really get into some very deep, very personal type conversations at the mastermind. And it's so beautiful.
I overheard that one of the conversations was about how women subdue themselves in the presence of their husbands, like how many of these ladies that show up actually do all the work behind the investor husband who gets all the credit, and then how whenever the husband's around, they're more quiet. And then and so that was a fascinating kind of thought that I'd love to hear you ladies' thoughts on that. I know for Shannon, you and I, that's not so much a thing, but
actually, it is. You'd be surprised, right? Well, it's not, because none of my male counterparts have ever been in
That's what I mean.
industry,
Right.
But so in this industry per se, I haven't really had too much of a problem. But I do come from marriage and domestic violence marriages, and I've been through 4 different abusive marriages, and so you wouldn't know it. Right? Because I'm a type A, high top dollar type, executive woman, right? But behind closed doors, that's not me, right? And you wouldn't even realize it. And I've done a lot of growing and changing and therapy for the last 3 to 5 years, and changing and doing a lot of good things and growing strong. And I'm now in a wonderful, very healthy, very amazing relationship.
I've loved seeing that from a distance.
And he's wonderful. And
you deserve that.
Yeah,
you do, Sharon. You're a great woman.
I agree.
I'm blushing. Sorry.
You're an A1 lady. Truly, you're a very nice person, a very smart person.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. But so some of these ladies that get up and talk about their situations at home, that they have to subdue themselves and not, when really they're the backbone of the whole business. And being able to give them suggestions on how to maneuver those tough situations was just really great, and honestly, just being able to be in a group of women, in a room of women, to share those things and just be seen and heard.
Oh, that's huge. Being seen and heard will literally lower your autoimmune markers if you have autoimmune. I know that about myself. So if I have a close relationship in my life where I feel seen and heard and I get touched, I need a lot of touch. Unfortunately, I'm a high touch need person. My autoimmune numbers go down. Isn't that crazy? But if I'm not touched and I'm not seen and I'm not heard, my autoimmune, like the bad stuff, it flares up. And so we are sensitive. We are sensitive creatures because we have to keep these completely helpless babies. I was with my hairdresser today. She has a 6-month-old baby. And I'm like, this is why we're crazy. Supposedly, I put quotations. We're not actually crazy. We are responding to an insane amount of demands from nature, from this tiny helpless thing that is completely dependent on us, has no agency unto itself, can't speak. And so here I am, I've raised 2 and there's this baby and I'm like, oh, it's teething and we need to pick it up, but it's not my baby. So I can't do all those instinctive things like, pick it up, nurse it, rub my finger on its gums. Like that's not my place with someone else's baby, but those were my instincts, right?
But you just want to.
Yeah, like I have
really bad baby fever right now, and I don't understand it, except that I'm getting to that point where the time is limited, and so I understand.
I know. My body really wants to crank out one more, and thankfully Daryl's keeping the sanity at bay. He's like, no, he's like, you need to go find another guy to do that. I'm like, I don't want to find another guy to do that with. So that's a real thing, that instinct. And he said, men retain their sanity and remember what it was like. And I don't know why we don't. I mean, it was harder for us, honestly. Most likely, I'm the one who had to wake up in the middle of the night. But so I'm super excited for your relationship. And thanks for being up with Sweetheart Mastermind. The first year I had really bad COVID that kept me in bed for almost a month. So you guys wouldn't have wanted me to show up for that. And then last year I was traveling in California during the Sweetheart Mastermind. I was staying
you were. I remember that.
On Murder Mountain of all places. I didn't know it was Murder Mountain until I was there. And there's like, watch out, you're in Murder Mountain. I'm like, girl. I don't know what Murder Mountain is, but I feel the vibe. There's no 911 out there. There's no infrastructure. There's no cell phone. You have to get by on your charm and not offend anybody. And that's a good experience. I think people need to know what it's like when the stakes are high and the cell phone towers don't work. You have to get by like we did in the 80s and 90s, where you were polite. You didn't run your mouth. you might end up in a shallow hole somewhere, and no one even cares. There's not enough law enforcement to even pursue it. So, Donda, do you remember those days whenever it was like,
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember our parents like, well, be home by dinner, and we'd take off on our bikes and go do whatever. And they just, we just did, as long as we were home by dinner time.
And if you said or did the wrong thing, you were definitely ended in a fist fight.
I never did. We grew up in a little town, and so our town was pretty, But I'll tell you what, you get home and your parents are like, oh, I heard you did this today. I'm like, I just got home.
How'd you find out? Oh, I know. My mother knew everything. What? Yes. I couldn't do anything wrong, and she would know. Yep, absolutely.
Yep. Kept us in line, I guess. It's just like, they're going to know about it. Got to behave.
Exactly. But yes, you're right, Jen. Like the consequences were real back then and immediate, right? And today, you know, these people run their mouths, and you know, if there's any type of recourse, it's the person reacting that is condemned, not the one that ran their mouth in the first place, or caused the problem in the first place.
Agree.
It's so backwards.
You're right. You're right. It is, and because I was born in '84, I still conduct myself in a way of the way the world was before. I show respect as a default.
Yeah.
And I speak as if I'm in person with someone, even online or over the phone, because you never know. The world is small. You never know when you're going to see that person in person. Exactly. And guess what? There were times when I was younger and I did run my mouth. And you know what? I had to apologize, and that's embarrassing. So I don't like being embarrassed. So I don't do stuff where I'm going to have to be embarrassed later.
You think about it before you just do it. So that's good.
And if I do know that I'm being a little cheeky, I'm prepared to be embarrassed. I'm prepared for those consequences. And so we know that in business too. That's why it's important to never talk poo about other people. Keep your opinions to yourself, because it's going to get around.
Yeah.
Right.
So
that's an interesting point. One of the hardest things I struggle with is, how do you warn others, right, about someone that has done you wrong in this business without looking like you're just a gossiping woman or a scorned ex or whatever the deal is, right? How do you navigate those conversations? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
That's a very good question.
So I'm pretty blunt. I'll say, hey, I see you're dealing with so-and-so, and this so-and-so asked me to have a threesome with he and his wife, who's as wide as she is tall. And I jokingly told him, you could do a lot better than me. You could find someone way hotter and way younger. I don't know why you're coming at me for this, just totally messing with. And he's like, well, you're right, I could, but I really like your personality. I'm just like, this is someone we all know, by the way. I'm not going to be using any names.
Yes, I know.
And I was like, man, that's the gall of. And so I saw a friend of mine. She's like, yeah, I'm going to invest in his mastermind. And I was like, that dude asked me to have a threesome with his wife on Thanksgiving Day. I'm cooking. I'm busy. I don't, how much wine have you had with your lunch where you feel like it's okay to ask this question? And so I'll say, look, I don't think that makes him not good at what he does. It just means that she may want to be careful to not get pulled into that kind of BS.
Right.
And we're not talking about sometimes you have enough rapport where maybe you can have those kinds of conversations. I'm not poo-pooing that, people having personal conversations with you, whatever your preference may be, but there was no rapport there. It was just, oh, hey, let's do this. It's not like we were BFFs. We weren't friends. We didn't have multiple years of rapport and in and out day-to-day conversations where maybe that's a conversation. Maybe that's what they enjoyed. And so, but no, it's disrespectful to speak that way to someone that you don't even know, because it's basically saying, I see you as an object and not as a person.
Yeah.
And look, we all want to be loved, touched, seen, cared about. But the key word there is cared about.
Right.
And who wants to be objectified truly and truly not cared about and truly treated like a piece of toilet paper at a truck stop bathroom?
Right.
Nobody. So anyway, so I will be pretty frank, and I'll have those conversations with other people that I care about. Now, if it's someone that I don't know and they're interfacing with someone I had, not so great experience with, honestly, I'm going to say this is where my self-preservation kicks in. Not my circus, not my monkeys. I'm sorry. Unless they did something truly, truly dangerous and heinous, then I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. But this was someone that I particularly cared about and had a long history with. But how do you feel? I mean, do you feel like you need to warn even strangers at your own expense? Because maybe I'm just selfish. I'm like, that's too much trouble. I don't want to be on the chopping block for someone I don't really know.
It depends. And I think it depends on the scenario, right? So for me personally, I have a former partner that we invested together, and he was a contractor when we met, right? And it wasn't until, several months in, I realized he's not an actual contractor. He couldn't be anything better than maybe a handyman at best, right? And, he was living off of hard money loan construction draws rather than any work. Sorry, I hit my mute button. Burned through all of our loan money. And then I am left funding the rehab. And then he, of course, scooted off to do something else. And now, I'm left without hard money to do this. And now I'm picking up the pieces of this mess, right? Well, here's the problem is that we also were dating. And so the problem is now when people are doing business with him and I'm like, oh, I really that's not good, right? And I feel as that mothering instinct, oh, I should protect them from what I just went through, right?
What you went through was horrible. That's worth telling everybody about, because that's a serious livelihood situation. It's going to seriously affect people's livelihood. And that warrants telling a stranger for sure, because that's really, really irresponsible and wrong.
Yeah. And so that's the thing that I struggle with. The few people I have named him and told the situation to, it was turned around into, well, you're just a scorned ex-girlfriend or whatever. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, one of the struggle. If I were a man and that same thing happened to me and it was just a business partner, everyone would listen to me.
You're right. But the joke's on them. Look, there's so many times people don't take advice from me after they've asked, or even if they don't ask. And I feel like it's maybe because of my appearance. I don't know for sure. I can't prove that.
Donna, this girl looks like Jessica Rabbit for real. Girl, she's so beautiful.
She looks very beautiful. Yeah.
That's very kind. And I also, to just have some accountability, I don't try to hide that. I don't wear a burqa. I don't, I don't wear, I do wear mostly tight clothing, not always. And so, because I know that someday I'm going to be old and I'm going to be dead, and I'm just going to be a skeleton in a box with 2 implants that have rolled off to the side, or that's me in 40 years. So, or I'll be cremated and spread in the redwood forest. But so I just want to enjoy my life. And so I do get crap for it. And they're like, is that really what you need to do to enjoy your life, Jen? You really need to look at yourself. You really need to decide, is that important to you? Does that really define your character? Why can't you just be modest? Why can't you just be, I'm like, look, I have made myself plain just to get along. I've made myself plain. Do you know what happens? People treat me like shit. When you are an average or not so good looking woman, people treat you like shit in a different way. Now, whenever you're really beautiful, they treat you like shit in a contemptuous way. oh, well, you're so this, you think you're so this, you're so that, and you're a foul temptress, and I don't like you, and all this. But whenever you are average looking, they're mean to you in a totally different way.
Yeah.
They will say, I mean, I don't even know how to define it. I don't really have the words for it. It's the way you're dismissed, where if you're like, oh, excuse me, this or this, they kind of look at you like, did you just speak in my presence?
Right.
You know, why do you feel like you need to speak?
Yeah.
Who gave you the right to speak? And so you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. So I feel kind of like Dolly Parton in that, people asked her, why do you dress? Why do you wear the wig? Why do you wear because that's what she likes. That's what I like. And, but I do get a lot of crap for it. And I've learned to be okay with that. That the alternative is just being plain, and the world is even more cruel. It's plenty cruel whenever you're considered conventionally attractive, but it's even more cruel when you're not. And that's the cross that we bear in our gender. And men have their own problems. I'm not saying men don't have their own problems. They do. They have their own problems. In some ways, they're harder than our problems, because we don't have what's called the man box, right? The man box is, if you wear a purple shirt, you're gay. If you use more than a 3-syllable word, you're gay. If you use an umbrella, you're gay. Oh, dude, you're a queer, and you punch him in the shoulder. And so I think
you're beta, right?
Look at that soy boy with this umbrella.
Right.
Whereas ladies, we can wear purple, we can have an umbrella, we can put earmuffs on. I mean, if a man wears earmuffs, he's going to get called some slang, and I wear earmuffs because otherwise I get ear infections, and then I get vertigo. And if a man says something that's like, oh, you're a pussy, so I mean, men have it hard in their own way. They have the macho man box they have to stay in, or other men don't treat them with respect. So please know that anytime I talk about ladies' problems, it doesn't mean I'm excluding that men's issues as well, because I know they have them, and
they're just different, and
they are different.
We are different, and that's okay.
Yes, yeah, we are, and so
we're at the top of an hour.
Yeah.
This just went by so fast. I swear every week goes by faster, and I don't know what happens to our hour. We might need to go to an hour and a half at some point. Jennifer, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to say thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
And I wanted to put your contact back up for one last time so anyone can reach out to you. So Instagram, Facebook, it's at Elite Deal Finder that reaches you. And then your email is jen@reiDataSource.net. And
that's right.
Reach out to you either way and get in touch with you for all of your wonderful services, VA, cold callers, list pulling, lead management, all that stuff. And
Thank
you. Thank you for being here.
Ladies, thank you for this opportunity. This has been really, really fun and very different from any other podcast I've ever done. Refreshingly different.
Oh, thank you.
I love it. Thanks for coming on. All right. Thank you, podcast world. We're going to end for this evening. Good night.
Good night.